Hey. Hello. So I'm here. I'm going to talk about virtual reality, a new world to explore. I think this fits really well with today's theme of without borders, because there's a whole new load of experiences to explore and find, and problems to solve, and challenges and opportunities. Perhaps rather foolishly, I've chosen to do this in the style of a silent movie, but I won't be miming, so that's good. What I do want to say as well up front is this isn't a tech talk. It's not about specifications. It's not about prices and release dates. You know, Project Morpheus is a prototype, so I don't know any of those things about final specs and that. So please, if you do ask any questions of me around that, then you might get a bit of a shrug as an answer. So apologies for that. Okay. So who am I? I'm Dave Ranyard, run Sony's London studio, as Martin said. Here's some of the games that we've made. So iPet is an augmented reality game with a little pet. Wonderbook is also augmented reality. SingStar's a singing game. So quite a lot of social games. But it's worth noting that if we've done a lot of work on augmented reality, and it's not such a big leap to go from augmented reality to virtual reality. There's a number of similar problems that you're solving, for example, tracking and things like that. More recently, we've released a couple of tech demos along with Sony's Project Morpheus. The Deep, which was at GDC when Morpheus was announced, and VR Luge, which is the one that's out there for you to try. So that's kind of our involvement. We've got a number of people working on this. It's super exciting for us working in VR. The studio is very excited about it, getting in there early. We've been working in this for around 2 years now, actually. So what is virtual reality? Just to kind of take a step back. And I guess what I want to do today really is to just give you a bit of an understanding of the landscape at the moment, of some of the opportunities that are there, some of the challenges, and maybe pose a few questions and some debate and so on around this area. So what is virtual reality? It's really about you being in one place, but as being able to put you in another place. So this is Harold Lloyd. He's hanging off a clock. So I guess with VR, it's about you might be in a very normal room, or I don't know, on a stage like this, or on a beanbag out there playing VR Luge, but it's about us putting you in a very different place. Now, this is actually a third-person view, right? So I'm not Harold Lloyd. I'm empathizing with him, and he's a different character, which is kind of typical of movies and a number of games. We also have first-person games as well. So VR is like uber first-person, I guess. So if you can imagine this, the camera really is where we want your head to be. So you get this kind of view. So you might be in your living room where the floor is actually perfectly safe, but your mind believes that you're on the edge of a cliff and you might fall off. And I guess the idea of presence, which is something that's talked about a lot with VR, is that your conscious might know you're in your living room, but because of all the things that we're doing, we're fooling your subconscious, so we actually get the physical reactions and biological reactions of being like in this, I'm actually a bit scared or whatever. It gives us some great opportunities to transport people to other places, and I think, for those who haven't tried VR, please do. Can I just do a bit of a hands up? Who's done any VR demos in the room? And who's done our VR Luge demo? Okay, cool. So I'm now going to show a video of the other demo that we released, which is called The Deep. And for me, this sums up basically one of the big things we can get out of VR.
Okay, here we go. Going down. Next stop, basement level. Hey, I'm picking up something big down there with you. You see anything?
No! Ah! Oh no! Oh God, it's going to take that long.
Listen, have you ever done a set just...
Oh my God! Oh my God! Okay.
I want to try.
Oh.
Let me.
It's scary.
Controller. How did you find that?
Scary. Ooh, my heart's beating. Ooh, when it suddenly comes, and that And actually, your defences are taken away. That is the real.
You feel pretty vulnerable.
Scary
don't you?
bit.
Okay, so that's my mum. So you might think I'm an evil person now, I don't know. She wasn't scared of sharks when she did the demo, but she is now. No, she's fine. She's fine, really. So the point for me is 2 points, really, there. One is, when we released that at GDC, she rang me up and said, Dave, can I have a go at that? It's like, yeah, sure. Because do you know what? She's 72. She's never going to go down shark diving, right? Ever. But she had that experience, which I think is pretty cool. And the second thing is, I've known her all my life, obviously, and I know that was a genuine emotional response to what was happening to her. You know, it wasn't her patronising me or any of the guys. It was like, oh my God, I am being attacked by a shark, and she found it. She genuinely responded to it. So, there you go. That's the other demo that we put out there. So, why is everyone talking about VR now? I think Martin alludes to this in the intro, but I guess the technology is there, the sum of the parts is there, that I think we can genuinely make a really cool VR experience at reasonable cost. I read an interview with Jesse Snell recently, who was working in VR 20 years ago, and he said, do you know what, the components were there then, but it was $300,000, right, to put the kit together, whereas now, it's $300 for those parts, or something like that. So it's the screens are there. From the smartphones have really driven the improvement in screens, right? The processing power's there, and so on. That we can actually make a really compelling VR experience. So I think that's really exciting, and I think it brings us to this question: is VR a disruptive technology? So it's something that talks about a lot in games, in other industries, about disruptive technologies. And what I find personally interesting is looking at previous disruptive technologies, particularly in entertainment. So, when TV arrived, what did it do to radio and broadcast? When sound came to movies, hence the styling of the slides, what was that impact on that as an industry? When personal stereos came along, when MP3s came along, when smartphones came along, these disruptive technologies, we can look at those and maybe apply them to what we know now and perhaps draw some conclusions or at least get some insight. That's kind of what I want to do today, I guess. So who are the main players in this field at the moment? Well, I think it's probably reasonable to say it's Oculus and Sony. So this chap, Palmer Luckey, 2 or 3 years ago, started putting together the components to make the Oculus Rift. He was working with John Carmack from Doom. And, it just gathered traction. It was Kickstarter, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess something started to happen. And then at GDC this year, so at Sony, we've been working on VR for a long time as well internally. And at GDC this year, we kind of said, do you know what? We're working this. We've got a prototype. It's called Morpheus. Here it is on the right. There's one out there. Have a look, see what you think. And I think it's fair to say that that's the two main players. There are some others as well. So Samsung have just announced something recently. You put a Galaxy phone into it. There's a cardboard thing Google have done where you can put phone in there. And there's other things there as well. So that's kind of what's going on. Okay, how's it been received? So certainly from my perspective, we've had Morpheus on show at GDC, at E3, at Gamescom, and some other smaller events. And certainly for the consumers out there, it's the greatest show on earth. They love it. Here's a queue of people queuing up for the Deep. What we found at these events is the doors of the exhibition halls have got people queuing up. So if they open at 10, there's queues of people. The doors open, and they just leg it to the VR stands and queue because they want to try these experiences. So there's clearly an expectant demand there. People are really excited by this. Our job is to satisfy that demand, right? So here's someone playing the Deep. Here's a press quote from that experience. The shark attacked the surrounding cage, easily ripping off my only protection to open its jaws and devour me whole. As the demo ends, I hand back my headset and controller, shaking a little. It's a dazzling demonstration of Project Morpheus' ability to immerse you in a situation. And this is just an early prototype. It's great. I mean, I didn't do the work. Our team in the studio did the work, and testament to that. But I think it's interesting. It's getting well received by the press as well. Interestingly, at Gamescom, the USK rating board rated the Deep on a screen as a 12+, but in the headset as a 15+. So that's like an independent body basically saying it's more scary when you're in there. And that's because of this, you're actually in a different place and your body reacting to This is somebody playing Street Luge, which is out there. Another quote, which is pure awesome. I won't read it all out, but it's worth noting, actually, if you do luge, you can go underneath the lorries, the big lorries, and actually see the axles and things, which is pretty cool. And, I think that's something, I don't know if anyone here particularly wants to go and play with traffic on a big skateboard. I think I personally won't, because I fear for my life too much. But we can actually do that in VR, which we wouldn't necessarily do in the real world. And overall, it feels like the ecosystem around VR is getting a positive vibe. So it certainly feels like there's a consumer demand and interest in this as a sort of sector. But there are some skeptics, and here they are. It's my favourite picture in the whole deck. So, it's not all roses. There's some people who aren't as convinced about VR. So virtual reality is going to have trouble gaining mainstream acceptance in its current form, largely because it encloses you and keeps you on one spot. And that's John Romero, also from Doom. So I guess he's concerned that navigation doesn't have a standard, if you like, in VR. That's something I'm going to come back to, actually. And here's somebody else. So this is Ed Fries, who was at Xbox originally, is now doing 3D printing of like cool game characters. Hardcore gamers love new technologies and experiences and are willing to do almost anything to get them. So that's a good market. General users, however, are a different crowd. And I'm skeptical that general users are going to be strapping this thing onto their face anytime soon. I know my mum did it, but there you go. So at this point, I want to kind of jump back in time to silent movies, actually, and introduce this lady. So this is Mary Pickford, and she was one of the founders of United Artists. And she said, adding sound to movies would be like putting lipstick on the Venus de Milo. So I guess, silent movies, awesome art form, and perhaps she was concerned about spoiling it in some way by putting audio in there. And then this guy is D.W. Griffiths. And he was a movie pioneer, so he was an actor, and he made some silent movies as well. And he was even more direct with his thoughts on sound. We do what not want now and shall never want, the human voice in our films. So, clearly he was concerned about that change in that industry. But, I'm pretty sure we all know that audio going into movies was a big disruptive technology for that, and it changed that industry. I personally think this guy, who's also the coolest guy in this deck, summed it up really well for me. He's Conrad Veidt, who's an actor, and he said, in the middle of my third Hollywood picture, The Magician, the earthquake hit Hollywood. Not the real earthquake, just the talkies. And that's, I think that's a great quote about that. So my belief is it is a brave new world to explore with VR. There's some really exciting opportunities there, and there's some challenges to overcome. So things that we know work, I guess I'm going to take you through first. So we kind of saw that experience where my mum was being attacked by a shark. There's lots of experiences like that, and there's lots of different places to go where you couldn't really go if you weren't in VR. We also know that adrenaline-fueled experiences are pretty cool. So this is the Keystone Cops, but I'm thinking of VR Luge. That is, if you do that, it definitely gets your heart racing. And it feels very confident. I feel very confident saying that's a cool experience. We've done a lot of work with scary things as well. This guy, who isn't very scary, but this guy is quite scary. So what we've done, for example, looking at those social games that we've made, is we've applied social things to VR. So we've got companion apps running. We've actually got one running with VR Luge, where we can put somebody in like a haunted house or something, and then so they're the one person in the headset, and then other people can control the scares. So other people in the room can actually trigger what's scaring those people, and that's pretty cool. But there's lots of challenges to overcome still, and I think this is what's really interesting with VR, is that we haven't solved everything, and I think it does give us a level playing field for people who want to get into this. So one thing that we do need to overcome, it's not a big challenge, but how we've authored assets for a game, for example, has been about a window on the world. So even if it's a first-person game, we think that might, it does have a lot more similarities to VR, but the assets might be authored in a certain way. So I mean, looking at this is a film set from a black and white movie, but I'm pretty sure you can guess, like I would, that these buildings probably aren't actually perpendicular with right angles and so on. They're actually, designed like this to give this impression of a bigger scene. And certainly some of our game assets that we've already authored might not work straight away. So I think of it, it's a bit like if you go around the Universal Studios movie lot, right? And okay, in the film that they make, it looks great. It looks like a really long street or something like this. But actually, when you get there and walk about, the things have actually been made. The doorways. So a classic in westerns, all the doorways are quite short to make the actors look taller. So that's something from movies. But I know some of our games, the assets are authored not to be as real life. So doorways might be wider, door handles are in the middle, that kind of thing. So there's definitely something there that, if we were taking traditional assets and moving them to VR, we'd have to think about maybe reauthoring or reworking in some way. I talked about navigation as well, and that's something, there isn't a standard for navigating in VR. There's certainly some different demos out there that I think do a good job of it, but there's not quite a standard. And that's something, that was touched on by some of those skeptics that I brought up earlier. So I think that's something that we need to work on. But I also believe that there's a lot of interest in VR. I mean, it's like every other developer that I meet has bought an Oculus and said, I'm just tinkering with it at home, or I'm doing this. There's clearly some, people are really excited by this. There's a lot of very clever people out there who will solve this, I believe, personally. And so I think that will be overcome. And I will touch on that again in a minute. And the third point I want to make is you do need to design from the ground up. So you can't just take a game mechanic from a traditional video game and just plonk it into VR and kind of assume it'll work. You might have to change it, or you might really have to, go back to, 2 or 3 steps to make sure that experience really works in VR, because it is very different. Even just, for example, starting an experience. If you put somebody in an experience and it's just totally crazy to start with, it might really kind of do the head in. So they might need a bit of time to acclimatize, for example. So in our demo of the Deep, actually, we start off in what we call the sunshine zone, where there aren't any sharks. You're quite near the surface, the sun rays are coming down, and you've just got shoals of fish swimming about. And that's a great acclimatization, because you can just stand there, you can kind of get used to where you are, you can watch the fish going past, but you're not suddenly thrown in the middle of some crazy battle or something, which might be a little bit, actually quite, a bit intense to get into to start with. So that's just sort of different things to think about in terms of challenges. There are other opportunities along the way as well. So I think that VR is the beginning. There's a whole load of other things that we can that can be added into the mix over time as technology comes along as well. So I mean, we've been doing a lot of work with Move controllers and tracking the DS4 on the PlayStation, which gives you some physical input, might give you some hands or some other physical input into the space that you're in. Although actually, VR Luge is quite cool because it's pure Morpheus control. So you lie on a beanbag and you just lean left and right to steer, which is how you would steer a luge board. But in terms of new things coming along, there's also things like haptic feedback. So imagine being in this virtual environment and then actually feeling the physical force back. You're going to fool the brain even more that you're actually in a different place. Eye tracking is another thing. Some people have been experimenting with that. So imagine being in an environment where we know exactly where you're looking. Imagine interacting with a character, use really, really deep voice recognition, having a conversation with the character who turns around to you and says, hey, look at me when I'm talking to you. That's quite a different gaming experience. And there's other applications as well, and obviously there's various things you can see. There's things like the Tuscany demo, which is quite a lot of people have seen on YouTube and so on. So I'm kind of getting to the end now. My timer is going down. I've got 1 minute 12 left. So is VR a disruptive technology? I think it is. I think it could be. I think all the ingredients are there. Obviously, it's kind of you guys make your own thoughts up. Hopefully, I've given you some information on the landscape and our experiences with it that will stir some debate and some thought on this. I'm going to finish with one more quote, and this is a review of Alien Resurrection on the PlayStation 1, and this review is from the year 2000. The game's control setup is its most terrifying element. The left analog stick moves you forward, back, and strafes right and left, while the right analog stick turns you and can be used to look up and down. So that was, in the year 2000, you know, some of us believed that first-person shooters wouldn't work on a console, I guess. And we did a bit of a back-of-a-napkin maths in the office. So I looked at the top 5 FPSs on console and their sales, and it was like north of 250 million discs. So, you know, there were skeptics of things like that, but we overcame them. And I think that's, you know, there's a lot of intelligent people working in VR at the moment. And I think that for some of the challenges we got, I think it's a great opportunity, really, to get out there and work on those. And I'm at naught now, so I will say the end. OK, thank you very much.